Oh, here we go again. Another crypto influencer telling me how whales and big money is doing something that I apparently am not. Now, I want to stop you right there. I know, I completely get it. I know what some of you are probably thinking to yourselves already, typing down below. But I can promise you one thing. In today's video, you're going to learn something that I haven't ever heard or seen someone else talk about so far. And yet, it's one of the biggest and best kept secrets whales are keeping to themselves. You see, in a new, unchecked industry like crypto is a prime example of this, you don't really have anyone providing any true insights or correcting people and calling them out on their BS. Now, because of that, laziness becomes the normal, and that means smart people are able to prey on the masses like you and I. But today, well, today's different because I'm taking you guys behind the curtain to show you what the big money does to stay on top, which is something I strongly do believe everyone, let me say that again, everyone seriously must know ASAP, because there are some huge events coming up soon that will allow you to greatly benefit if you know this. Plus, of course, if you just know it, you can stay on top of the competition. Oh, and also before I forget, before we get right into the video, I want to say, guys, if you do appreciate how much effort I put into the video, or if you say, hey, I like this guy's style, I want to reward him with a like, I'm going to tell you guys to do so. Really means a lot. And also hit subscribe so you, of course, can achieve your crypto goals. Now, this is going to annoy some of you who really hold your beliefs to heart and you don't like to be challenged. This is going to really challenge you here, but it's all true, okay? And this all in regards to something that even I, until recently, haven't dove into or spoken much about, maybe even argued that I helped push this narrative, when in reality, it's not what's actually true. And what am I talking about here? Well, in order to explain it to all you guys, I'm going to take you through an example. Say we have a token and we have 100,000 tokens in circulation, and we have a token unlock happening here soon of 1 million. Yes, that's 10x the supply. It's going to really screw the token value. Well, what happens? Well, if all these 1 million tokens go into supply, we have all these people over here, of course, they're thinking to themselves, oh my God, it's going to get screwed over. My investment's going to drop in price. Well, guess what? That'd be correct, okay? If those tokens went into circulation, immediately, the price would fall from $1, okay, down to 0.09, just under 10 cents. So it would dilute over 10x. Insane. So James, Greg, Timmy, Susan, and Betty, they're all going to be pretty upset about that, right? And this is something that a lot of us do think of at crypto, and it makes sense. This is typical stocks, everything. When you have more tokens coming into a supply, it's called dilution, which means the value of our token goes down. I'm not debating that. That's definitely true. But here's what I'm debating, and here's will be the conversation of today. In the same example, again, you have currently 100K tokens in circulation. Price is currently $1, meaning the market caps are going to be about $100,000. Oh, we have a whole bunch of tokens coming into circulation. Well, it actually isn't quite true to the full effect. You see, if those tokens, those 1 million tokens, was distributed to James, Greg, Timmy, Susan, and Betty, actually, if they didn't sell their tokens at all, the price would remain $1, even though the circulating supply, even though technically all the tokens out there are 1.1 million. So you sort of see where I'm saying, and this is why it can be quite confusing and hard for people to hear, because where I'm going to take the conversation next is a few examples and overall outlook on how you can benefit from this are based all on dilution. It's all based on, when you see these token distributions and these token vesting schedules on many websites, right? Like, for example, Pith over here. You look at this and you think to yourself, right, we're down here right now. By the time I'm looking to sell my Pith over here in, 2025, we're going to go from like 1.5 billion, tokens in circulation up to like what, 6 billion? Oh my God, that's a 6 times dilution. I'm going to be, my price of my token, unless demand skyrockets, it's going to be 6 times less. And yes, that is a very reasonable way to think about it. And technically you're not wrong, but there is a very nuanced answer to this question here. And I want to take you guys through again, a couple examples to really show you what I'm talking about. Ultimately speaking, and to kind of very long story short here, a price of a project is only going to be reduced when tokens come into circulation, when they're sold on a market. That can be a decentralized market like a DEX, that can be a centralized market like Binance. Whatever happens, we'll look at some examples here in a second, but that is the way that token price is actually affected. If none of the tokens are sold that are distributed, then it's all fine. Prime example, we take HBAR over here. If you gave me, if Hedera minted 30 billion more tokens, if it doubled its supply today, but gave me those tokens over the counter, right? They didn't sell them. I didn't buy them on the open market. That would affect the price this much. Absolutely nothing would change. If I then got those tokens and put them in a wallet and never touched them again, everything would stay the same. If they never told you about it, if they didn't tell anyone that they did that, no one would be none the wiser, okay? So you gotta remember it like that. If they did decide to sell those tokens and I bought them, the price would tank and then fall back up again, or go back up again, because of course I bought them back. I wanna go through Optimism and also Sandbox very quickly. They're gonna be great examples of what I'm talking about, because as we'll see in a minute, you can actually benefit from this in two ways, but you have to know how the market reacts to token unlocks to do that. So in this case, we had literally over 2x of the supply going to circulation overnight. So 115%, which is just over a 2x, went into circulation when Optimism decided to input 386 million OP tokens worth $587 million. We did see a sell the event happen right before, but we're on the 4-hour candle charts over here. So every single candle is 4 hours. So that means 6 candles is a whole entire 24 hours here. And we can see in this 24-hour period, right, these two black lines was when the day of the unlock happened. And actually, in the first 8 hours, we went up almost 10%. That's crazy. How do you go 2.5x or almost 2.5x of your supply in circulation, and yet the immediate thing that happens is the price goes up? That would mean that you would have to basically have like billions of dollars on the day of the unlock instantly injected into the market to hold that, right, to go up. Doesn't make any sense, okay? And this is why you have to understand this. Overall, on the close, from the open to the close of Optimism on that day, we had negative 2.7%, which means it was basically neutral. Nothing really happened on the day. Now, 9 days later, what happened? Well, we did have a massive crash, right? So I want to talk about that very briefly over here. Again, 16% drop before it happened. On the day, again, neutral, nothing really happened. And then over a week later, we had 21% on the close and 35% wick. Now, why does that happen? Why, in the case of Optimism, did we sell before? Nothing happened on the day, and then we tanked after. Two reasons. One, degens love to sell in anticipation for something. They also love to buy in anticipation for something. So when you have a large unlock like Optimism over here, if the unlock, as we'll see in a minute, is going towards people who aren't going to sell, like I told you, if HBAR minted a whole bunch of tokens for me and I didn't sell, it's not going to affect the price. But degens still think it does, and this is the misconception. So in the case where we have a look at the distribution and who has access to these tokens on these big unlocks, if it isn't going to people who are going to sell, maybe it's the foundation, maybe it's just diamond hands, whales, for example, right, accredited investors, then there isn't going to be a change on the day, but degens still think it's a bad thing. Again, what happens in FOMO? What happens if there's good news that comes out? Well, typically, good news has a buy the rumor phase, and on the day of the news, it tanks. Opposite happens. But we have this event over here occur when the actual unlocks go to people who actually end up selling their tokens. Now, usually it can take about a week or two for that to actually occur, because some of these big players, of course, have to go through many checks, have to confirm things, yes, no, what do we do here, analyze the market, what's happening, and then it tanks. Notice, we also had a correction happen pretty quick after another 10 or so days, because it's a great opportunity for these whales to accumulate more. So these are some of the things you have to understand when it comes to, assessing token unlocks and dilution in general. Now, we can go on and on all day about the different sort of nuanced examples about all this, right? We have, over here with Optimism, very specifically, this was their original token unlock schedule. The cliff, the unlock, wasn't supposed to be over a 2x, right? They weren't supposed to dilute their token supply by that much. Initially, it was only 10% on this day, right? But actually, again, as we can see down here with proof from Lunar Crush, it did. It over 2x the supply on this one day. Again, many articles are made touching on it as well. So you only know that really when you do keep up to speed with your project, which is why I tell you guys, I don't say shit for no reason, right? 10 minutes per project of research per day. You only know this stuff if you can go into articles like this from Optimism and read and click links and understand what they're deciding to do, right? Over here, for example, they pretty much said, hey, don't worry about this. Things have changed slightly, right? Slightly. And so, of course, there's a 3-step process I want you guys to go through every single time you're looking at your projects and when it comes to maybe before you buy or before you decide to sell, okay? And it's number 1, locate the vesting and distribution schedules. It can be old. Actually, it's important. It is old because step number 2 is then Google searching the most up-to-date forecast. It can just simply be Optimism, crypto, latest token vesting, latest token distribution. This is just simply a screenshot of their Google Sheet, which is what they told you guys to check out over here on their update, because it's, again, a new forecast. And so if you read through this, punch the numbers, you could say, okay, there's going to be a large unlock now they've changed the whole thing. Hence why Hedera, side note, doesn't like to forecast things outside of 1/4 of a year, for this exact reason, to not lead people astray and get them upset. So a lot of people would have been pretty upset with optimism at this point, right? And the third thing is not just assessing these unlocks when they're happening and how much. We want to also assess who has access to the tokens. So is it the third parties, for example? Now, I call third parties, and we'll revisit this term quite a lot, and I do talk about it a lot. Venture capitalists, airdrops, community rounds, team, and advisors. Basically, all the people or entities that might decide to sell their tokens at a given time. Now, these are effectively people who don't have to tell anyone when they decide to distribute their tokens. It's people like you and me, or even corporations now that can, of course, sell their tokens like that and not tell you. Also, how many tokens do these people get, right? If they have 1 million tokens or 100 tokens, like, that does matter. So we want to find, roughly speaking, how much is unlocking for them, and also the price they got in at. This might be harder to find because you have to go and search things like over here with Arbitrum in an example I'm going to show you here, which is the private sale price, right? To see how many multiples they might be up at a given time. Okay, so you crunch the numbers, right? So we're having, in this example over here, Optimism, these guys might be unlocking, let's just say, double the supply, and they might be getting, 200 million tokens, and they're in at roughly a 17x right now, so they're going to be likely, wanting to sell. That makes all sense, and this is kind of the outlook you want to have. Now, I get it. I totally understand. For someone who's just in crypto, the average person, for example, that doesn't want to look into this sort of stuff, all right, this is going to be quite confusing. You're probably thinking to yourself, Kyron, why did you have to tell me this for? I wanted to be, just believing what I wanted to believe before this. I get it. You don't have to make it a complicated process. Just see how many tokens are unlocking and who has access to them. At the end of this video, I'm going to give you guys a cheat sheet that's going to tell you how likely those third parties are to sell when they have access to their tokens at a specific time in the bull market, okay? So stay tuned right to the very end for that. Trust me, it will be worth it. Now, again, Sandbox very quickly over here, they didn't have such a huge dilution like we saw with Optimism, only 16%, mind you, 16% is quite a large amount to dilute the supply in one hit. So in the first 12 hours, we actually went up again. We didn't really have a massive sell-off event at all. Minor consolidation period, I guess you could say. And over here on the day, it was net neutral. Literally no movement in price whatsoever. However, the day after, we had a massive sell-off, okay? And again, this goes back to my point before. It depends who has access to those tokens. If it's completely going, perfect example over here, like Pith. If majority of this in this big chunk over here is going to the ecosystem growth, or again, protocol development or publisher awards, these aren't likely going to be sold instantly. However, if it's going to things like the private sales, or as we'll see, mainly airdrops, right? These sort of entities or people that will likely sell straight away, want to take a profit, right? This is when they'll want to sell. So you can see already what we can kind of start piecing together in our minds. We can say to ourselves, right, if these token distributions are going to entities that aren't really going to want to sell straight away, or it's not going to anyone that is going to sell straight away, well, of course, if there is a sort of sell the rumor type event, well, we can, of course, go to ourselves, right, we're going to hold, we're not going to take profit up here, we're going to hold, there's going to be a dip, and we're going to buy the damn dip, then we're going to be fine. On the other side of things, right, if we can see, hey, hold on a second, a lot of these tokens are going to third parties, like in the case of Sandbox and Optimism over here, right, we can expect something like this to happen. We can expect a massive sell-off to occur, which again, usually comes in the first week or two after the unlock. Now, it doesn't actually come before because they don't have access to their tokens. That's all degen behavior. And what typically does follow is some sort of positive price movement, okay? So they sell their tokens at some point, which we can get, of course, cheaper tokens in. You might even want to take some profit if you're someone who does want to do that. A little bit more risky if you decide to. I would just say if you have conviction in the project, not financial advice, of course, to wait for this to happen. You have time on your side, only if it's to third parties. Again, those third parties I mentioned before, because then they'll want to take some profit. Now, again, stay tuned to the very end of the video because that is where I will touch on more about the types of third parties and how inclined they will be to sell in moments like this. More recently, HBAR. So this was a prime example of very recent news. People getting scared about their unlock. They unlocked about 11% of their supply, or $408 million worth of H-bar. So what you would do is go to the news. Okay, look at the news. Who are these tokens basically going to? And then you would come back over here and you would assess this with H-bar themselves if you can. So you're checking the news and then again going over and double checking from ideally the horse's mouth, right? The actual project itself. But over here, we can tell most of these tokens, right? They unlocked about 4.86 billion or 11% of the supply. Most of them, 4.2 billion, are going towards ecosystem growth, net positive things, which is good for your price at the end of the day. And then over here, a very small fraction going towards the council's operational costs. Well, HBAR is a business, so they have to, of course, pay for things like venues and the fact of people, governing the damn project. That's fine as well. They will likely sell over the course of time. And we can maybe possibly see some slight sell pressure on the day, or at least after the day, from these simple agreement for future token buyers who we can assess if we come over here to things like this, and you can read up on who those people are. And those people, in the case of HBAR, are close friends and family of the project and accredited investors. Now, simply speaking, they're not going to want to sell their tokens straight away. They're smart people, likely know the founders of HBAR very intimately, so they're going to probably want to hold at least till 2025 to take some profit. So HBAR is not one to worry about. Another example over here is Arbitrum. These guys have 1.2 billion tokens unlocked in March, which is pretty well close to the situation we've been seeing over here for Optimism, this massive unlock. As you can see, 87% of the tokens circulating supply, at least at that time, so almost as large as Optimism in this case, a massive unlock. And if we come over here to find what's actually going to happen, where are these tokens going to? Unfortunately, Arbitrum doesn't have that much information. I'm using DeFi Llama, and I wouldn't recommend using third parties like Token Unlocks, the website Token Unlocks, because they often are wrong. But in this case, I know Arbitrum's correct on DeFi Llama because they're using the actual source over here that I was using myself to assess this, and it was very mind-numbing because you have to work the maths out yourself. There's no charts for this. So I know if DeFi Llama is correctly pulling this information in, it's going to be right. So this is fine in the case of Arbitrum. And as you can see, the large amount of unlocks over here in this orangey color is actually going to the DAO treasury, which is fine. We do have a large unlock happening over here for the investors and also in the purple here for the advisors. So these are in the team. So this is actually third parties. Roughly speaking, we have about 600 to 700 million tokens, if not more, going to third parties. So we can possibly expect a slight sell-off on the day, but we're not going to expect a massive drop because, again, a lot of those tokens are going towards the DAO. So in the case of Arbitrum, very quickly, the way that we can take advantage of this is expecting, because it's very, very big unlock, degens to sell before the event, in which we might want to take some profits. And then when it tanks down, hypothetically speaking, 7 to 10 days later, we of course can buy even dirt cheaper, right? We made the profit and we can buy even dirt cheaper. Again, maybe you don't want to take profit at all. That's the safer way to do it. Maybe you just want to buy in cheaper in the case that these people decide to sell. Again, the bull market's right around the corner, guys. So you can't expect all these guys to want to sell prematurely. So why does this all happen? Well, token unlocks equals tokens are now circulating, but not technically. This was taken from Optimism's website. This is what they said. Circulating supply is defined as the amount of tokens in general circulation that have no known restrictions on transfer. That's the best way I think I could probably put it myself. So the price is also found from an aggregate of all those exchanges, of course. So again, when you're looking at, the price of the token falling down because of an unlock, that only happens when those tokens being sent to these entities sell their tokens on the open market. That's why OTC or over-the-counter trades are a thing, to stop people from selling and then buying, crashing the price and causing fear and FOMO on the open market. The takeaway here is price fall from degens selling the rumor, opposite to, again, buy the rumor and sell the news, because they're worried about the entire unlock being sold, whether they know that's what they're expecting or not. Assess who the unlocked tokens are being delivered to and if they have a reason to sell. Again, if they're a venture capitalist, they have to, of course, honor their own investors and make profit for them. So there might be, and the foundation, ecosystem, network development, so on, anything basically going towards the incentivization of the growth of the network is net positive, meaning it's a good thing. They might sell their tokens at some point. They might give those tokens over the counter to, maybe an ecosystem grant recipient. But of course, that is fine. That is what's going to grow the ecosystem overall, bring in more people, pushing the price up. Here's that nice little, sheet I told you guys I would provide you at the end of this video. It's in regards to all the third parties and kind of what their incentive might be behind selling their tokens at a given time. So in a bear market and a bull market situation, or a bear and a bull sentiment, should I say. So airdrop, I believe if you see airdrop, the community is likely to sell, particularly airdrop recipients, 90% and 95% in a bear and bull market. These guys almost immediately dump most of their tokens. ICO round for the community, 70% in a bear and a bull market's 80%. ICO round over here, so the early round for the venture capital funds, 20% in a bear market and 50% in a bull market. Now, notice with these ones over here, I've given them all 50% for the ICO round, friends and family, venture capitalist team and advisors, and the founders and employees, because it's in a bull market. They're likely to sell, but it's 50-50 because I don't really know their conviction levels, right? It's going to change per investor and per team member, okay? So I don't really know. The most and the lowest I can do is 50-50, but for these guys, I'm very confident, most based on history, that they're going to want to sell their tokens ASAP. In a bear market, though, you can pretty much count on these guys never really wanting to sell their tokens because they're smart enough to wait for the bull run, unless the team's really dodgy, of course. So guys, with that said, this sheet will be made available for you in the Discord, completely free under the Miro board section. Take advantage of my work and research, and if you've made it this far, I would love if you like the video to honor all the work I have done here. And until next time, guys, take good care of yourselves. We'll talk soon.